everybody. In this video, we are going to be talking about how to know what your budget is when you're buying a house. We're going to talk about three things. We're going to talk about your income and expenses, whether or not you have a down payment saved up. And then lastly, we're going to talk about how to use a mortgage calculator, how to adjust your numbers, and look at all the factors so you know what your budget is when buying a house and what price point. My name is Yael, and I am dedicated to helping people like you with all of their real estate needs, so I'm super excited to be here. First thing is, what is your budget? Money coming in and money coming out, and what your savings rate is. So I personally use YNAB, which stands for You Need a Budget. It's an awesome website, totally recommend it, but whatever you use is good. And the concept of it is a digital envelope system. So I don't use cash, everything's digital. Every transaction that I do is accounted for, and the money that I have in the bank, I assign that money to certain categories. So food, childcare, insurance, taxes, whatever my expenses are. And then when the expenses come in, it kind of deducts from the envelope. So everything's very visual and it has reports, and I love it. But I think that many people, I know for myself personally, when I just started working and there wasn't a lot of money, we were like, if you don't have money, how do you keep a budget? There is no money. I think that regardless what your situation, a written budget, it helps you solidify your goals and helps you understand what you want. First step is, before you do anything, is make sure you know what your expenses are. And why is this important? Because when you're buying a house, the rule of thumb for housing expenses, according to Dave Ramsey, is 25% of your net income. So that's after taxes, and he says after savings as well, and your HSA, IRA, or whatever you're saving up money for. I personally think that's super conservative, especially depends on what area you're living in, and I feel like a 30 to 35% is comfortable. Now we have to look at what our expenses, and everybody has unique and individual expenses. So I have 4 children in private school, so that is super expensive. And if I was just going with the mortgage's debt to income ratio, they're not factoring in that I have 2,000 plus payments in childcare and tuition. You really have to know, do you have a pet? Do you have medical bills? What other expenses you have? And then just make sure that your housing expenses are 30%. I'm going to also talk about savings. The ratio for savings, I think a comfortable ratio is 20% of your expenses. What you want to be doing when you are seeing how much could you afford, don't forget the bill of your savings. So even if it's 10% of your income that's going into an IRA account, just make sure it's there. You don't want to be house poor. You don't want to spend all your money on your housing and then have nothing else later on. So the next thing we're going to talk about is whether or not you have a down payment. If you do have a down payment saved up, we're going to take that amount and we're going to put it into a mortgage calculator, which I'm going to talk to you more about, and figure out how to figure out what price point you are, whether you're putting down 3%, 5%, 10%, 15%, 20%, or more. And we'll talk about how to adjust those numbers to see what your actual payments are. So say you have a down payment, we'll talk about using the mortgage calculator. If you don't have payments, we're still going to talk about the mortgage calculator. I'm going to play with those numbers so that I can show you what your housing payments are going to be. After we figure out what your housing payments that you could afford, then we're going to create a strategy for saving up for that down payment so that you could buy a house. So I'm going to show you a trick to how to figure out what your mortgage payments are. I use the Zillow app or an Easy Calculator app, whichever app you use is fine. So the first thing you do is you open up the Zillow app, and then you press on the More button. From the More button, you're going to press on payment calculators, and I have my payment calculators out. And now you're gonna go from your down payment. So let's assume that you know what your down payment is, okay? Say you have $75,000. Now you take the purchase price of the calculator and you go down. So as I'm scrolling the price amount, I can see how much my payments will be at 20%. The 20% down is about $380,000. It's not perfect, but just about right. Now I'm gonna look at the interest rate. So I'm gonna say interest rates are at 6% because that's what there are today. And then taxes. So typically taxes for a home that size is about $7,500 in my area, homeowners insurance, and no HOA. So over here you see that your payments for a house that's $380,000 is gonna be close to $2,700. Now let's play around with this a little bit more. Let's say you wanted to put down 15%, and then your payments are gonna be close to $3,400 a month. And say you wanted to do 10%, you can go up to $700,000, but your payments would be closer to $4,800. The interest rates go up or down, depends on your brokerage. So with mortgage brokers, there's different type of brokers. You could go straight to the bank. The issue with going straight to the bank is that you don't really have a real person to talk to, and if there's an issue, there's no one really there. The next thing is you have brokerages, and when you get a loan from a brokerage, the fees are a little bit higher. Basically, you want to price out with 3 to 4 different lenders to see what their rates are and ask them at 10%, at 15%, and at 20%, what will my rates be? And there are caps. So if you're having a loan of $726,000, that's a different rate, and it might be better to take out a lower loan. So there's different caps. I know right now with investment properties, if you're taking a loan under $200,000, they're going to give you a better rate. There are some times where you put down 10%, you're getting a cheaper rate than if you put down 20%. And then there's something called PMI, which is insurance for properties that you're putting under 20% down on. So it all comes down to your income and your expenses and the percentage of expenses. So how do you know how much you could afford? So either you are renting right now. So take your rental income and say, how much more can I spend for my rental income? And weigh whether it pays for you to buy a house right now, or you didn't move out at all. Now the question is, do you have housing expenses right now? And is your budget now going to zero housing expenses, and now we have housing expenses, or rent, and now our rent is going to increase? And really just sliding around those numbers. When you know your budget, it's totally not an issue because everything's on paper. Now, if you don't have a down payment saved up, what you do is you see what your 30% affordability is, and then you put the difference of that in savings. Let's say your rent is $1,500 a month, and the house that you could afford and want is $3,000 a month. Start putting away an extra $1,500 a month into your down payment account separate from your budget.